What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be going through Listener Encounters Volume 12. Yay! So I know the last one was entitled 10, and the one before that was 11, but the one before that was 9. I got a little mixed up on the numbers. So we're at number 12, this one's number 12, and that's where we'll be going from here on out. I'm running low on listener encounters, guys, so please send those in. My email address will be on the screen later on and in the description box as well. Next is going to be number 13, so that's going to be pretty awesome. Our first listener encounter comes from our good friend, Philip. Philip says, Gemma, hello, I am a subscriber to Steve Stockton and your channel. I have commented a few times about some personal experience I have had. You replied and asked if you could use my story and if I could email it to you. I'm going to retell it along with some other things that have happened. I got married to my wife back in 2001 and we moved into a newly built apartment that was located in central Kentucky. This place was outside of town and in a very rural, secluded area. Plainly put, there were few houses on the road we lived on. The closest neighbor was our landlord, who lived about 3 to 4 miles down the road. All around this apartment were woods, knobs, and a field with cows that belonged to our landlord. So it was me, my wife, and 2-year-old stepson that was living in the apartment. We both worked second shift and we were both off for the weekend. Friday night, my wife and stepson were getting ready for bed. My stepson was sleeping with us because he was having night terrors. They had gone to bed and I decided to stay up late on the computer. I've always had trouble sleeping, so it was nothing unusual. They'd only been in bed for about 10 to 20 minutes and I heard my wife scream out my name. I got up and ran down the hallway and turned on the bedroom light. My wife and stepson were sitting up in bed, wide-eyed looking. I asked, "What's happened? What's wrong?" They looked petrified. My wife said, "The bed shook." I looked for a minute and smiled, saying, "It was most likely the dog." We had a small dog, a Maltese at the time. She said, "It wasn't the dog. The bed literally came up and down. It felt like the bed came up off of the floor." They were both very scared, I could tell by looking at them. So I checked under the bed, in the bathroom, the closet. I even went throughout the rest of the house. I basically laughed it off and told them, if anything else happens, just yell at me and I'll be right back in. I went and got back on the computer. Later, I finally got sleepy and went to bed. The next morning, early, they both got up and were leaving to go to town to go to Walmart. Being as it was my day off and I was sleeping well, I decided to stay in and sleep in. They left and I went back to sleep. Once they were gone, I had gone back to sleep. At some point, I was awakened by the bed shaking. I realized it, but was too deep in sleep, and it hadn't yet registered or occurred to me that this is what had happened the night before. For a second time, the bed shook. This time I realized it enough to open my eyes, but I still hadn't put it together with what had happened the night before. So again, I closed my eyes, and again I went back to sleep. For a third time, the bed shook. But this time it shook much more violently. This time it hit me. I remember trying to wake myself up, and when I awoke, somehow it was like I knew exactly where to look. I raised up, turned, and looked toward the foot end of the bed. That's when I saw it. For years, the only way I knew how to describe it was a transparent figure, like a ghost, but it wasn't exactly transparent. It had distortion in the figure. It sort of had sparkles from where the light from the bedroom window was hitting it. I think that's the only reason I saw it. There was one open window in the room, and every morning the sunrise would come through that window. I remember it well because it was really annoying. When I saw it, I was obviously filled with fear and pure dread. My parents were very religious, and they used to tell us kids that if we ever saw anything scary like ghosts, spirits, or evil entities, to use the name of Jesus Christ and it would protect us. For some reason, when I saw it, that's exactly what went through my mind. So when I sat up and saw it, after seconds passed, I said, "In Jesus Christ's name, leave me alone." After saying that, I instantly got up, jumped out of the bed, and ran out of the bedroom, down the hallway, and into the living room. As I came into the living room, my wife and stepson had just walked through the front door. I remember my wife asking me what had happened, what was wrong, but I couldn't speak. She said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." Finally, I was able to settle down from being in such shock, and I was able to tell her what had happened. We stayed in that apartment for about another week and we moved. During the remaining time, we slept together on the living room floor. We wouldn't even go into the bathroom alone. In the coming weeks and months after this happened, my wife and I realized that many odd things had happened before then. As I said, our son was having night terrors, but it was more to it than that. One morning, my wife got up around 6 a.m. and went to check on our son. He wasn't in his room, so she went into the living room and she found the front door wide open. She ran outside to find him in a field across the road, running around chasing our dog in the rain. She yelled at him, and it was like he was in a trance or something. Finally, she was able to get him to come. He didn't remember unlocking the front door to get out. We always keep our doors locked. There wasn't a chair anywhere near the front door, so we assumed we had left the door unlocked by accident. We just figured it was sleepwalking and started allowing him to sleep with us. Another experience, I was alone in the apartment one day on the computer. I heard a knock at the door. I instantly got up and answered the door, but no one was there. Another time, I was sitting at my desk and on the computer. I had everything muted in the house to get some peace and quiet. While sitting there with my back turned, I could hear someone or something heavy walk across the floor right behind me. Of course, I turned and didn't see anything. My wife told me that more than once she felt like someone was watching her. This is an experience I had that I never even told my wife. I thought maybe I was just being super paranoid at the time. Anyway, we both got off of work around 12 every night. She would get home 30 minutes later than me because she would go and pick up our son from her grandmother's house. She watched him while we were at work. Once a week, I would get home early and go out the back door where we kept a grill, and I'd grill us steaks or hamburgers. One night, I decided to do this. I went out there and began to grill steaks. I put the steaks on the grill, and all of a sudden, I got a feeling I wasn't alone, and for whatever reason, something told me that I needed to get inside immediately and that I was in danger. I turned the gas and grill off and left the steaks and went back inside. The next day, I was going to grill and recalled leaving the steaks out there on the grill. I thought to myself, this is going to be a mess. When I went to clean the grill, I flipped the grill lid up and the steak was gone. Again, we lived out in the country. There was nothing but woods all around us, and behind our apartment was a clearing fence off where the landlord kept the cows. I've always been a gun enthusiast, and I purchased a new AR-15. I couldn't wait to shoot it. One day, I decided to take a hike and went across the cattle field and into the woods. As I got further into the woods, out of nowhere, I got the feeling I was being watched, and again, a really deep feeling I was in danger. Something told me that if I kept going, I would never make it back. I lost all interest in shooting the gun, so I turned around and booked it. As soon as I got out of the woods, I lost the feeling I had and just put the experience out of my mind. I never told anybody because I wondered to myself, am I going crazy? These things happened. My wife and stepson remember, but they don't like talking about it. For me, it had the opposite effect. It sparked my interest into finding out what exactly we experienced. What did I see and experience? Over the past few years, I found out that other people like you and Steve Stockton have had similar experience and call it the Glimmer Man. I've never had any conversations with anyone else that had the same experience, but in an effort to possibly find out more, I'm going to give my opinion and tell you more experience I had after this happened and that I realized later down the road after this experience. So basically what Philip is saying is that this experience sparked this whole chain of memory for him where he finally started putting two and two together. Before this experience, I had led a really good life. I worked, had a really good job, paid my bills, I believed in God, had a normal upbringing, had really great parents. I never did drugs or drank alcohol. I was 22 at the time of the experience. I don't remember if it was right before the experience or after, but my life turned completely upside down for a few years, and it was like I was possessed or something. I started doing drugs and drinking alcohol excessively. I began showing interest in the occult. I began watching movies with violence and gore. I began having marital problems, and I let it absolutely consume me. Soon the drugs became a problem at work, which couldn't have come at a worse time. I had recently been promoted of all things. Soon the drugs affected my work attendance and performance. The company tried in every way to help me, and I simply didn't care. This was so unlike me. I loved my job. I loved what I did. My wife became pregnant, and I assaulted her and ended up being locked up. Soon I lost my job, and I was so sick going through withdrawal, I couldn't keep another one. Everything I worked for in the future I had my sights on were gone. During this time, I remember starting to see things out of the corner of my eyes. To be honest, I'd always see them in the dark. It was always shadow figures. They'd be peeking behind a door frame or down a hallway. I remember telling my father and asking him, "Am I going crazy?" My dad would tell me sometimes he had the same experiences. Things just got worse and worse. Soon I was homeless and I began stealing things. I had never stolen anything. I hated thieves. This wasn't me, and I knew it deep down. I began hanging around people that normally you wouldn't even want to let around your dog. I was at the lowest of the low, and my wife had divorced me, but was still trying to give me another chance. It didn't change anything. I had the worst nightmares I believe anyone could have. During all of this time, I would still go through my head what had happened back in that apartment. Was this thing trying to warn me, or was it what brought it on? Finally, after getting into trouble countless times in 2014, I got into trouble enough to where I went in front of a judge that wouldn't slap me on the wrist. He gave me 3 years. During that time, I prayed daily and nightly, and I told myself I was going to make the most out of this. And I did. I spent my whole time doing whatever I could to keep busy and to stay clean. Just because you're in jail or prison, you're not away from drugs. I think they're just as easy to get in jail as they are to get outside of jail. I enrolled in a substance abuse program, and after a year, I was granted parole. I got out, walked my parole officer off, and became free again. I reconnected with my wife and kids. To this day, I'm still clean of drugs and alcohol, and I still pray. To this day, I don't feel like I'm living an evil life. However, I still occasionally see the shadow figures peeping out from behind a doorway, always out of the corner of my eye. But it's very seldom. The reason I've told this last part about my life is to give my opinion. I think whatever the shadow figures and the glimmer man is, I think they're evil. This brings me to tell another experience I had, but this happened back when I was a kid and teenager. I just want to say, Philip, that definitely there are mild forms of demonic possession that could attach themselves to you and make you behave in this way, doing drugs and alcohol when normally you wouldn't, assaults, committing robberies, totally being out of your character and violent like that. I believe any kind of addiction is the result of a mild possession. I know a lot of people disagree with me. We don't have to fight in the comments. I'm just stating my opinion. Feel free to state yours respectfully. So I definitely believe that can happen. A negative energy might have been around you that you weren't really aware of or didn't think could affect you. And what happened was you took it for granted that it couldn't affect you, and it might have attached itself to you and bloomed into a demonic possession. So to answer your question about that, yes, I do believe that could have been a mild form of possession. Let's move forward. As a child and teenager, we lived in an older house built back in the 1940s. I had a sister and an older brother. When I was 10 years old, my sister was 18 years old and moved out and into a home of her own. She had had a baby and gotten married. At the same time, my brother was 19 years old and he left for basic training. He joined the Army. As I've said, I had great parents. They were religious and worked. They worked and provided for me. My only complaint would be that they were very protective of me. They didn't allow me to stay the night with friends or to hang out with certain kids. When I look back, they were doing the right thing. Those kids I wanted to spend the night with and hang out with were always in trouble. During this time, I developed sleeping problems. I was afraid of the dark. I would stay up all night, and when I would go to sleep, even to this day, I have to have a light or television on. My wife and kids are the same way. It was during this time of my life I remember several times not being able to sleep or being asleep and not being able to move. I'd lay there, be completely frozen, and have an overwhelming amount of fear come over me. I'd sometimes just feel a presence in the room with me. There were times I'd actually feel like I was floating. I remember once coming home from school, and because I hadn't slept the night before, I was exhausted. I came in and literally passed out laying on my stomach in my room. Beside my room was the living room where my dad always stayed. I remember having the feeling of not being able to move, a feeling of fear and of panic, like there was something in the room with me. All of a sudden, I'd feel like I couldn't breathe, and I would realize I was dreaming but couldn't wake myself up. I tried everything and just couldn't wake up. I remember at this time seeing a silhouette, a black figure standing in the doorway with what I thought was the light coming from the living room. But they just stood there. I thought at the time it was my dad, but if it was my dad, why didn't he help me? Again, I just couldn't seem to wake up, and I'd feel like I was floating, petrified, and not able to breathe. I couldn't move. For whatever reason, I remembered saying to myself, Jesus, please help me. Instantly, I woke up. I was covered in sweat and panting to catch my breath. This happened several times, and I never told anyone about it, not even my parents. I honestly thought at that time I was just having a nightmare. Now, all these years later, I don't think it was a dream. I think it was something demonic. So right there, you're talking about sleep paralysis. And I mean, if I asked anyone who's had sleep paralysis encounter or encounter with shadow person during sleep paralysis, put it in the comments. I mean, you are definitely not alone. So Philip's story continues. And he goes on to say, now I'm about to tell you something I found out that validated that experience. So a few years ago, my brother retired from the Army. He did contract work for a while, but ultimately decided to come back home. Maybe it was to get away from his divorce, but he came home after 20 plus years. He ended up getting remarried a year or so after he was home and was having a family get-together. He and I were alone outside talking, and we had left to go and get something from the store. As we were driving, we got to talking about the old house we lived in and how we both had the same bedroom. It was at this time he told me about experiences he had had in that bedroom where he couldn't move. He said he felt a presence in that room, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't wake up or move. He said he remembered specifically the night before he left for basic training this happening, and all he could do was look at his alarm clock, and time would go by slowly, and he had the feeling of fear and dread coming over him. He said he just couldn't move or wake himself up. You can imagine my jaw dropping when I heard him tell me this. I think I stuttered trying to get the words out to tell him the same thing had happened to me. When I tried to tell him, I don't know why, but he shut me down quickly and didn't want to talk about it anymore. That's always been the trouble when I try and talk about these experiences or the paranormal, at least with my own family. They don't want to go there. My wife and stepson were scared, but it's hard for me to imagine my brother being scared of anything. These are my experiences to the best of my memory. I believe in God and Jesus Christ. If there is a good, then there is also an evil, and I think both of these take the form of many of these entities that people experience in their everyday lives. A point that I have tried to make with several people, whether it is shadow people, Bigfoot, aliens, ghosts, the Glimmerman, reptilians, ferals, I think evil can take form as any of these, including us people. So many people have witnessed these entities. If you listen to their interviews, many of these witnesses' encounters are just ordinary, sane, everyday people. In multiple encounters with different entities, witnesses have used the name of Jesus Christ to repel the entity, and to their account, it worked. Can this many people who don't even know each other be lying? It's unlikely. I hope by sharing my experiences, it helps someone. At the very least, it'll entertain them. Thanks for reading and sharing my story, Philip. Philip, I've always stood by, and I've said it many times on this channel, the fact that if you are in a sleep paralysis episode dealing with shadow people or anything that causes you fear or dread, call on the name of Jesus Christ. Recite the Lord's Prayer. Recite any prayer. Do a Hail Mary, whatever. Even if you don't, I've had people who aren't Christian or Catholic who don't even believe in Jesus, who have done this, who said it worked. It just popped into their head to do it. So for whatever reason, it does work. I 100% believe you. Thank you so much for sharing that part of yourself with me. The rest of it, I will get to and respond as soon as I can. Philip, thank you so, so much. Extremely informative. I love the super long encounters, guys. Keep them coming. Our next encounter comes from Miss Josie, our very own Barbie Melissa Wiggins mom. Here we go. As a newlywed, I lived in Berlin, Germany with my new husband. We lived in the economy, the German population. We lived in a very nice neighborhood. All of the houses were fenced with 5-foot slats that were pointed on the top. I worked at an American convenience store and walked to the city bus and U-Bahn subway. One fall evening on my walk home, it had just gotten dark. A block from my house, I heard the dog who lived across our street. He was pacing up and down the fence line, snorting and salivating really loudly. I couldn't see him because the line of parked cars were between him and me. I was walking toward the guttural sounds of the dog because he was about only 30 feet from my house and the safety of my gate. As I approached the sound of the panting and slobbering dog, I heard the sound of his paws on the cobblestone road. That new sound told me that he was out of his fence and was coming toward me at a fast pace. I leaned against my own gate and waited for the impending attack. I saw him running toward me. I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer. I saw the animal slide to a stop at the end of the last parked car. He stood still and glared at me with amber eyes. I stood still with my arms outstretched and waited. Then he snorted one last time as if he recognized me and had dismissed his attack plan. After what seemed like an eternity, he turned and trotted off toward his own yard. I opened my gate and went into the safety of my own house. I whispered a thankful prayer. I knew that God had spared me, and I was grateful. I believe you 100%. I can tell you so many stories, and I am going to do my own encounter series, guys. Miss Josie, I think I have another one from you. So before I clap, let me find it. Okay, Miss Josie, I couldn't find another one from you, but I know I should have one. So if I missed any, please let me know. Our next one comes from Nordiand too. He sent me a whole bunch of very short ones. So I'm just going to go into like 3 or 4 of them, and these are from Nordiand too. I sat and talked to an elderly couple for at least 45 minutes in the Gardner House Museum. I told them nice chatting and I had to leave. I went out the front door and all of a sudden I felt really tired. I sat down on the front porch steps and a guy came walking up. I said to him, "That's a really nice old couple you have working here. We chatted for a long time." The guy looked at me like I was crazy and said, "There's no one in there." He took out his keys and unlocked the door and went in. I had just spent 45 minutes talking to a couple of ghosts. This one's called the Octagon House. I was walking back to town from my friend's farm. It was about a 5-mile walk. I took a shortcut down Newburgh Road and was walking past the spooky old Octagon House. Everyone was afraid of that old house. I decided I would go into it for bragging rights. You know, beer courage. I went in the back door and looked around the first floor. Looked like no one had been in there for many years. The place was my friend's grandpa's house. My friend said there is some weird stuff that goes on there, so stay away from it. Anyway, I decided to check out the second story. It had a spiral staircase. It was pitch black on the stairs. When I got to the top of the stairs, there was a big bedroom with no curtains on the windows, and a big full moon was shining in that lighted the room up. The place was creepy, but I didn't see any ghosts or anything spooky. So I went back down the stairs and out the back door and went home. The next day I went downtown and met up with a bunch of my friends, and I told them of my adventure, and we all decided to go to the Octagon House and drink some more beer. We got there and walked to the back door, and the guy who was in the front said, "You said you went upstairs?" And I said, "Yeah." The guy said, "You did not go up those stairs." I looked and the stairs were all rotted. You could see through them to the basement. I don't know how, but I did get up them stairs. Just one of those things you can't explain, I guess. When I was a teenager, I used to go downtown and wait for my friends to show up and we would go party. I was hanging out at the bank and a casual friend named Paul showed up and said, "Hi, what's up?" And just as he said that, lightning flashed and he got a frightened look on his face like he was afraid of me, and he started babbling and turned and ran off. I don't know what he saw, but he avoided me like the plague after that. And one last one from Nordiand too. Downtown there was a building where back in the 1920s, a lawyer took his own life by jumping out of the window of his office. Fast forward to the 1990s, and that building was a pawn shop I used to go to and buy my secondhand tools. One day I was in there browsing around, and all of a sudden the street door burst open and a rush of wind came in. And the owner and myself heard footsteps come in the door and through the store and up the stairs to the second floor. The store owner and I looked at each other, and he had a freaked out look on his face. I said to him, "I'm getting out of here. Bye." Nordiand, thank you so much. Miss Josie, thank you so much. Philip, thank you so much. Just so everyone knows, this is the last of my listener encounters, except one that I'm still going through and editing because it was super duper long and I have to make sure it's easy for me to read as I go through it. Guys, please be sure and give this video a big thumbs up, not just because you enjoyed hanging out and spending this time with me, but also for the people who put themselves out there, shared their stories, and were brave enough and kind enough to let me share them with you all. Spread the love by sharing this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. And please, even if you are already subscribed and you know it, make sure your notification bell is turned on. If you have any experiences with the supernatural and or paranormal, please feel free to email me at gemmajadeparanormal@gmail.com and I will put them in a future episode of Listener Encounters. We're already at number 12. I can't wait to see how spooky number 13 is. Guys, be sure and send them in because like I said, I am out. The longer, the better. Please be sure and check out the description box for all the usual stuff, some important information. There will be links to the paperback and Kindle version of my book, which by the way, guys, thank you so much for all of your support, all of you who purchased it. If you've already read it, please go on Amazon and leave a really good review for me. I would really appreciate the 5 stars. All right. Thank you so much. Also in the description box, there will be links for the live stream Steve Stockton and I do every single week, Fireside Chat, the live oracle readings right here on Wednesday nights, and campfire stories. If you've never joined a live stream, go on in the description box, check one out, check them all out, and see if you can come and pop in. They're all a really great time. We have so much fun, and we're like a big family that we really love for you to join. Also in the description box, PayPal and Patreon information to make financial donations to the channel, or my Amazon gift wishlist link for the channel, which has oracle decks and signage, all kinds of things for my new home office that I'm starting to make this channel better, to make my career go further so I can do more for and give more to you guys. Remember, always justice for Caleb Smith. I'm hoping to have the updated interview with April done soon. There's a lot of new information and a lot of it is really good on April's side. So guys, be kind to yourselves, be kind to each other. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, have your best day, have your best night, and I will see you guys next time. Mwah. Bye-bye.